Thank you, Luke. Hello, everyone. So, that was a very generous introduction. Who in the room knows me? And, I know Margaret from 10 years ago. Yes. How are you, Derek? Okay, so who doesn't know me? Okay. Well, that's kind of handy, because otherwise you might be bored by what I'm about to share. Where do we begin? 100 million might be a stretch, but not actually too far. So I am actually the woman who invented what you all know as hot stone massage. For real. I came up with the idea walking along Noosa's beach more than 25 years ago, and I wanted something that was thermotherapy and cryotherapy, that's using heat and cold contrasts. And I had actually finished osteopathy and exercise physiology in London, and I was fascinated in the emerging spa industry. And so I decided to create a treatment that would be integrated into massage and that could be offered through beauty salons and day spas. Never in my wildest imagination did I understand that it could lead me to here today. So in about a month, I'll be in the US, in Boston, Massachusetts, and I'll be hosting an event that is the first Positive Prime Global Summit. And about 25 years ago, I thought about who do I admire and respect most that has influenced me. And I need to take you back a little bit further because I'm a Brisbane girl. I live here on the Sunshine Coast. I actually grew up in Papua New Guinea, so Brisbane girl's a bit of a stretch. And I went to university on the Gold Coast at Bond when it was brand new and everybody thought we were rich little kids paying for our degrees because we were really dumb. Some of that's true. And I left and I went to London, and I was really hungry and dynamic and ambitious and wanted to prove them all wrong. And I landed in a management consultancy, which at the time was the very best in the world. I didn't know that though. Of the Fortune 50, so you see these huge companies in these lists, we had 49 of the 50 global mergers on our books. And I was ready to work hard, and they knew that and definitely leveraged that. And I was doing 100-hour weeks. So I was traveling between you want me to go this way a little? Yeah. Okay. I was traveling between London and New York almost every single week, and I was working on both continents, and I was specialising in how do you integrate teams of 5,000 people in a merger and acquisition process. It was intense. It really was truly intense. And I used to go and have a massage and lie there on each one of those jet lag recovery opportunities and think, I wonder where the margins are in the spa industry, because it's really labour intensive. And then I approached some people about getting into the spa industry, and they said to me, look, love, you're going to have to go back and be a therapist. And I was thinking, I can't wait to tell my parents who paid for my degree at Bond University in Commerce that I'm going to be a therapist. But actually, that's what I did. So resilience is really about how do we bounce forward? And I'm going to say to you that every one of the people who lay on a massage table, I realised, was stressed, emotionally distressed. And in 100% of cases, it was because of what was happening in their relationships, or their bank accounts, or in their offices, or in the crisis from a diagnosis, something related to their actual health and well-being. Most people don't go and have a massage because they've got nothing better to do and an enormous amount of dispensable income. Most people who go to a day spa are actually quite discerning. Fast forward 25 years, and I now have an Australian Research Council, ARC grant, which is very fancy. I didn't know how fancy it was until I got it. And I did so with a man by the name of Dr. Avinash Singh, and he is at the Brain Computer Interface Lab, BCI lab, at the University of Technology, Sydney. And the reason why is because a couple of years ago, we did some research on one of the new treatments I had created in this evolution that has been 25 years in the spa industry, because I started to realise that if I wanted people to really deal with stress, it can't be when they lie on a massage table. We have to go way upstream. And I used to think it was about the mind and psychology and our limiting beliefs and so forth. And I now know it's actually also about the brain. But it's about the way that our brains exist in the environments that we're in, the spaces inhabited by the people in the places that we spend time in. Now, I've actually just said to you some really key words. So we're going to dive a little further into this. That is me. That's a photograph taken by me, not Luke's photographer. The other one that was used for the LinkedIn advertising, that was taken by Lauren. I am a best-selling author. Oh, that is me at Mount Koroi with lithos therapy. I have, on most occasions, spoken at either a huge conference or on a tele-summit to hundreds of thousands of people, at least every week for the last couple of years. We don't need to go into all of this, but today we're actually really going to talk about your nervous system. See, massage is really about balancing out the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. You all know that, don't you? I can see lots of nods. So what's this got to do with anything? Well, in a global merger, as in our lives today, each and every single one of us, we've been led to believe that when we face a threat, we will do fight or flight. Our amygdala in our brain is hijacked. Who knows that? Who's heard about the amygdala? Who's heard about fight or flight? The amazing thing about the research that we did at the University of Technology, Sydney, was we did EEGs, eye tracking, skin conductance, and heart rate variability while people were viewing what is a positive prime session, and we're going to show you what one of those is. And do you know what we do as humans before we think about fighting or fleeing? Do you know what we do? We look for friends. Luke is right. Our survival instinct actually triggers first. Do we have any support? Who are our friends who can help us get through this moment? There is nothing more important to you as a human being than who are your friends. Who can you trust? Who's loyal? Let's just have a little think about our decent friends. They're honest. They're reliable. They tell us the truth even when we don't want to hear it. What else? Well, friends is literally the difference between life and death to our brains. That's all you need to take away from tonight. You've been misled. Not Luke's media, other media, might have told you that the survival instinct actually got you into fight or flight. That's not the truth. First, you were looking for friends. What I can tell you about in terms of the faint is that it's very true that fear can scare us to death. So before 8 a.m, about 5 years ago, my heart stopped for 23 seconds. I was lucky at the Sunshine Coast University Hospital they'd already put a cardiac loop in, so they knew. And after about 10 seconds, things start to go very wrong very quickly. Irreparable, irreversible kidney damage, and I could go on and on and on. What we discovered was I have an autonomic nervous system disorder, and it's actually extremely rare, and it is a little like MND. I now have a pacemaker. That was a non-negotiable. I tried to get out of it. But my body had actually processed the world that I lived in such a way that I was actually literally scared to death, not metaphorically. And I'm a robust human who has spent 20 years in the wellness industry. And if it can happen to me, that's actually what scared me more. So I decided that I was going to research a lot more about how do we balance out our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. See, the autonomic nervous system is actually nothing to do with the autoimmune system, and lots of people get it confused. But fight or flight is what people think about in terms of sympathetic, and it prepares the body for stress. But the truth is, as Luke alluded to, AI is going to rain on us unprecedented uncertainty that is going to cause the average human more stress than we are biologically able to cope with. I hate to tell you that, but it's the truth. And we're creating a little documentary at the moment. And interestingly enough, someone asked me, what's it about? I said, well, we're fucked. The world's fucked. We're all going to get fucked. And it's going to get a whole heap more fucked. And I hate using that word, but it's pretty close to the reality. But if that's actually what we're facing, then what do we do about it? Humans are really adaptable. We can, so long as we harness neuroplasticity, we can cope with increasing amounts of uncertainty. And we must. So I want you to think about everything else that we're going to talk about in terms of positive prime as simply exercise. This woman actually informs most of what I've developed. Her name is Dr. Barbara Fredrickson. She is famous for something called the broaden-and-build theory. And what she essentially says is the more we can experience positive emotions, the more resourceful and creative we become. And what we actually do is we broaden, almost it's our peripheral vision, and we can see opportunities that were always there, but we never noticed them before. And that got me super intrigued. How do we actually engage in the broaden and build effect as real humans living real lives? What it essentially says is, when we are stressed, unfortunately, we focus on all that's negative and the obstacles and the reasons why we can't or we won't. We don't actually feel expansive. And so the question for someone like me is, how do I get everybody into the experience that is the broaden and build effect? What helps us to bounce back? And how is it that I actually survived what I now know is technically called a voodoo death? So extraordinary that most people don't survive it. I did return though. And that particular pause, it's a prolonged sinus pause, was actually the 6th. I'd had 5 previous to that, one of them whilst I was driving a motor vehicle in Noosa on a Sunday at 7 p.m. But I was dead behind the wheel. Like literally dead. And I actually went off the road and had a head-on collision with the trees. What's extraordinary is that my husband was following me in his car. And shortly after witnessing that, he had an unexpected quadruple bypass at Scuff. And he has no other risk factors. He's not overweight, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke. He does do anger though. And so let me tell you what anger does to our bodies. When we are frustrated by the little things that don't work every day, it is the equivalent of smoking a packet of cigarettes a day. How much anger do you need to experience? Have a guess. How much anger in a day? 15. 15 minutes. It's pretty close. It's a tiny amount. Look, I do anger for at least 30 minutes a day, but you could never convince me to smoke 2 packets of cigarettes a day. And so part of what I have been working on is this very old model about how we change as human beings and how we deal with uncertainty. And most of our attention has actually been on the iceberg, but I have to tell you that's a distraction. It's actually about the ocean. What we need to do if we want to change our thinking, which then changes our behaviour, is we actually have to think about the environment in which the iceberg is bobbing around. I happen to be one of the first people in the world to come up with this about 20 years ago, so I'm now well known for it, particularly in the United States. And I started to think about pink positive inverse blue negative. And epigenetics, who in the room knows what epigenetics is? Our environments do shape us. Okay, so our epigenetics are much more important than our genetics. That's the truth. Yes, we've inherited a whole heap of traits, but actually the places and the spaces and the people we surround ourselves with has a much greater influence. So if you want to change the ocean, you're going to need an enormous amount of pink food dye. And then it will change the iceberg. Do you all get that? Yeah? It's not about trying to eliminate your limiting beliefs. You don't need to excavate your histories. That's exciting, because I'm going to tell you, those of us in this room, we're going to survive the next 5 years of unprecedented change because of this, because of the positivity we're going to create on the Sunshine Coast. Alrighty, so Positive Prime is the name of our app. I'll do a few little pieces about this. You're all going to have it for free, so I'm not here trying to sell you anything. If I was, it'd cost you $200 a year, and I would think that that was exceptionally good value. We proved that within 3 minutes of you watching something called a Positive Prime session, we can change your brain waves and you'll enter a state of flow where you'll have synchronization of alpha and theta with bursts of gamma. Now, for those people who are very spiritual, that's actually the state we tried to get to, into deep meditation or prayer, where we're connected with one mind or the universe or the quantum field. This does it reliably within 3 minutes. It lasts for 6 hours. This is what we proved. We were the first people in the world. We presented at the Society for Neuroscience about 2.5 years ago, and that's actually what led us to approach the federal government for our next phase. Wait till I tell you what our next phase is. So Positive Prime sessions, just as you want to watch them right here and right now, what we do know is that it's going to increase productivity. We've got sales teams that use this. There are doctors who are given 2 case studies. If they're negatively primed, they don't come to an accurate diagnosis within the time period they're given. If they're positively primed, they do actually come to a positive diagnosis that's accurate within the time period on the stopwatch. It's extraordinary to see. There are ways that we positive prime though, so we'll just take a really quick look here. In a Positive Prime session, I want you to imagine you're going to watch something that's like a very fancy slideshow. That's essentially what it is, except that its simplicity belies its sophistication. But it is very simple. You just press play and you watch it and you can personalise it. You'll see lots of Duchenne smiles. What do Duchenne smiles do? The retina in your eyes processes smiles, photographs of smiles. You don't even need to be in front of... Can you smile at me, please? Thank you. You don't even need to be smiling at each other in physical reality. Your eyes can see a photograph. It goes to your visual cortex. It sends messages to your endocrine system, and hormonally you will start to produce serotonin, dopamine, and oxytocin. You will have the broaden-and-build effect happen, and all you need to do is see a certain number of Duchenne smiles. So in every single one of our Positive Prime sessions, there's a certain ratio of Duchenne smiles. You must also see what we actually call social connection and pro-social behaviour, people being kind and helpful and patient, people actually literally lending a hand to each other, volunteering. We know that there are certain images that actually ignite within you feeling like you belong and feeling like you're safe. Do you want to hear the groundbreaking piece? You don't even need to be around real humans who actually do make you feel like you belong. You can literally see a photograph and your visual cortex will process it as if it's your reality. That's the extraordinary thing. So there are all sorts of other things. Every time you see someone with their arms up in the air, do you know that your eyes process that and your body starts to produce testosterone? That gives you a sense of confidence. So there's an enormous amount of research that is done about all of the different aspects that we've built into that have informed or inspired what is positive prime. Every single time you press play on one of these sessions, and there's over 300 of them in the app, so there's content on trauma, on grief, on succeeding in sales, on negotiations, on parenting, on falling pregnant. I mean, seriously, there's 300 different topics. They're all positive prime sessions, contributed by really rather remarkable executive coaches, best-selling authors, thought leaders, those kinds of people in the world. And on each viewing, it has reshuffled the deck of cards, and it's randomized, and it's absolutely essential. If I show your brain a PowerPoint presentation or a vision board, your brain will switch off the second time you see it. And most people actually say to me, oh, I use this as my vision board because I don't know how to get vision boards to work. And I go, well, unfortunately, neuroscience will tell us that the brain needs novelty. Otherwise, it won't continue to process the information. So every single time you press play on a positive prime session, it reshuffles and causes neuroplasticity so that there's novelty, and your brain cannot predict the order in which the images are shown. That's absolutely key to what we do. Alrighty, Duchenne smiles. Now let me tell you about green tree canopy. Every single time I show this photo, something happens to every single human who sees it, and there's lots of these types of photos. Do you want to know what it is? It's giving you a boost to the way that your body produces cytokines. You're getting a boost to your immune system. It's that simple. They've done a lot of research, and in particular, there's a woman named Dr. Esther Sternberg. I'll tell you a little more about that. But she actually was the first to prove that patients in hospitals who can see green tree canopy actually have different outcomes. They're released more quickly, they take less pain medication. I could go on and on and on, right? So this has implications to environment and built environment, and a lot of this work now is informing architects and people who are developing aged care facilities, and Esther Sternberg's playlist, dance card, is full. I'm going to explain why in a second. Every single time your brain sees something that is round, do you know what? You become less aggressive. That's very important in this day and age. And so in a positive prime session, there are a certain number of round shapes because we're priming you to actually be more kind, more patient. We already know about this. Everyone remember what I said 5 minutes ago? Oh, good. Great. What's this? Pro-social behaviour. So what we know is if we show you a certain number of images of pro-social behaviour, you are much more likely to be more helpful. Really good for teams. Really good for communities. Really good for the Sunshine Coast, right? And or everything else. Now, inside every single positive prime session, there are also 200 of these I ams, you ares, thank yous, and global statements. So who in the room knows about affirmations? I am beautiful, I am kind, I'm smart. Well, did you know that actually they're not as powerful as you are statements? There's always been a power differential in everything that we've ever learned as humans. The people we admired and respected said to me, in my case, oh, Kim, you're so special. No, I never heard that. You're supposed to laugh, right? I never heard that. I may have heard you're a painful child, you're annoying, you're I did hear I have webbed toes. Who needed to know that? Too much information. It actually made me a very fast swimmer. I believed them when they said that I was duck-like and so should swim-like, and I was a champion swimmer. So anyway, you are the most important affirmations. Any of you have got I am beautiful or I am successful? No, you need to see that, but you are is actually more important. Okay, so let's just go along here a little bit about resilience. The science is solid. The more grateful you are, the more resilient you are. Period. Full stop. Period's a very American word, isn't it? If we had another hour together, I could tell you about all of these different elements about positive prime, the Pygmalion effect, what the placebo effect has to do with the nocebo effect, what the reticular activating system is doing, and so on. So I read this book, The Happiness Advantage, by this man, Sean Acor, and I reached out to him and I said, hey, can I show you my positive prime sessions? And he, at the time, was in the top 10 of all-time views for TED Talks. He did have a look at positive prime, and then he introduced me to Oprah Winfrey, and positive prime sessions sit inside his course, which is called The Science of Happiness, that Oprah created and then sold to Google. So 50,000 Google employees actually have positive prime sessions. That's his beautiful wife. They did the first piece of research about what happens when people are positively primed and why it lasts for 6 hours, and how if I actually introduce new content to you, so you're learning in a teaching context, you will actually retain that information and recall that information if you were in a state of being positively primed whilst you were learning. So we do have teachers now who are using positive prime. That's the course, Oprah and Sean, Kimbo, I'm Kimbo. So what I can tell you is that it's been 10 years in the making for this overnight success, and we've only just got started. So yes, that's the building that we work in Sydney. This is the fancy research that we actually presented. It says some pretty incredible things. I'll tell you what's amazing though, is that it says we did the research on humans. Do you all want something funny to go home with? So in America, we wouldn't have been allowed to do the research we did here in Australia, because in Australia, if you go through ethics board approval at an institution like UTS, because it's a fine research institution, if you get ethics approval, you can actually do your research on humans. Handy that if we want to know what happens inside our brains. So when we presented in America, there was 20,000 people there who came up to us and said, oh wow, how did you get approval to do it in brain? I'm thinking to myself, you are kidding, aren't you? Who else are you going to research? What else are you going to... Anyway, okay, so let me just go back here. Professor Stephen G. Post is my mentor, and he is at a School of Medicine in New York, the University of New York. He wrote this book, Why Good Things Happen to Good People, and that's a lot of very heavy well-being science. He's just about to come out with Pure Unlimited Love, Science and the 7 Paths to Inner Peace. And I don't think that there's a more important topic for our times. I told him that Avinash and I had received an ARC grant, and you are some of the first people in the world to know what we're doing, because we actually only launched it 2 weeks ago in Brisbane at the Tattersalls Club. So I want you to imagine you're wearing some noise-cancelling headphones. Who's ever tried some noise-cancelling headphones? They work, don't they? They cancel out the noise. But what I want you to imagine is a sensor on your ear that cancels out anxiety. Imagine. The Australian federal government gave Avinash and me a nice grant through the Australian Research Council to prove out our prototype, and we are a third of the way there, and it's looking very promising. So we think within the next 5 years we will have a commercially available anxiety cancelling sensor, and we'll be the world's first. And you know what's amazing that I did not know? You know how the cochlear ear plant made us the world's leaders in helping people who couldn't hear? That's because we lead the world in brain-computer interfaces. Did you all know that? In Australia, we lead the world. And at the Brain-Computer Interface Lab at UTS in Sydney, I have actually just seen something that you've got to know about. People who are visually impaired, legally blind, who only ever have a walking aid or a dog, just had a sensor that's non-invasive attached, and they walked across a room with all sorts of obstacles, and their brain could see. That is what is also happening with AI. That's how fast we're moving. So I am actually just a little baby entrepreneur here on the Sunshine Coast, hanging out in the Noosa hinterland, trying to do this thing that is world class and world first. And I like the Sunshine Coast, and I don't want to have to go and live in Boston to make this happen, but it's really, really interesting trying to get these ideas up off the ground. And then Luke says, hey, come and talk at the Budrum Tavern. I go, yes, somewhere here at home. All right, so I told Stephen that we got an ARC grant, and he said, Kim, we should have a deep and meaningful conversation about AI and machines and humanity and peace and positivity. And then he told me that he's been working with this man, Dr. Gregory Frashone, for the last 40 years. And so he picked up the phone and he asked Gregory to come and speak at our event. And he is actually the head of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. He is the head of psychiatry at Massachusetts General Hospital, which is the largest teaching hospital in the world. He is the head of the Benson Henry Institute. And Dr. Gregory Frashone, it'll be Dr. Frashone to me when I meet him next month in person. I've had lots of meetings with him since. He's actually literally informing us and inspiring us with respect to what it is that we're building. It'd be great if I could find some Aussies to do the same. Dr. Stephen Post organised for Sir John Templeton's foundation, it's called the Templeton Foundation, to give this man, Matthew Lee, $40 million, $40 million, to study flourishing at Harvard. Do you know what flourishing is? Flourishing is now the frontier of everything anyone's actually talking about in well-being at work. Oh, guess whose house I'm going to next month? Martin Seligman's. So I alluded to this. People were lying on massage tables, and I started to think, how could I actually help them and go all the way upstream? And so I dived into all of the work that is from the field of positive psychology. And what I know, because of this story about Dr. Matthew Lee receiving this grant to study flourishing at Harvard, is that the Templeton Foundation also provided all the original funding to the University of Pennsylvania to create the entire Centre for Positive Psychology. So positive psychology as an entire body of work now 20 plus years later would not exist without Stephen Post, who's my mentor, making sure that the Templeton Foundation funded the University of Pennsylvania's Centre for Positive Psychology. Now Harvard's going to actually take the title from UPenn. This man, Dr. Robert Emmons, I have actually reached out to many, many, many times over the last 20 years because he is the world's leading researcher on gratitude. So I'm just going to tell you something really simple. You're all in business and you've earned this. Have I been talking too long? Am I winding up now? Oh, are you all ready for another 10 minutes? You're exhausted already? So what we know about gratitude in business is that if you handwrite thank you to your customers, and they did this huge piece of research that was funded through his centre. So Stephen Post organised for the Templeton Foundation to actually fund Dr. Robert Emmons at the University of California, Davis, to actually study gratitude. Is that a real subject to study? Absolutely. So if you say thank you in writing, and we tracked and traced credit cards from all of your customers for the next 3 months, we would see some surprising results. You would have an increase in spend the next time, and if we track that over 3 years, that customer would come back more regularly. What are you all going to do starting tomorrow? Yeah, handwrite thanks. It's not that hard, is it? Right? Do you go to a coffee shop that gives you a little bicky and says thanks? It's very simple. It's also very inexpensive. I happen to write a book called I Am Grateful for Life. You do have one. In the spa industry, I was really fortunate because I had introduced lithotherapy, the heated and chilled marble sculptures, to places like the Byron Resort or the Four Seasons Resort throughout Asia and so forth. So I pick up the phone and I say, hey, I've written this beautiful little gift book. Do you want to put it in your retail area? And they bought boxes of books. And so I became a best-selling author without actually trying to be an author. I was just creating a cute little gift book. But anyway, that's when I started to go down the rabbit hole of gratitude. And that's actually how I found that there was this enormous amount of research happening. And Bob Emmons is the editor of the most prestigious journal in the world in positive psychology. So all these people are actually coming and speaking at our event in Boston in a couple of weeks' time. And I have never, ever, ever, ever taken this much risk in my life. So if I can ask of you one thing, pray. Just pray for me that I pull it off, because everything is on the line for this. So Dr. Esther Sternberg is actually a woman who used to be at the head of the NIH, and that's a very prestigious position in the United States of America. She actually proved something. Do you want me to yeah. Should I tell you when I get back, or do you want to know now? Oh, you want to know now? Of course you do. So they had thousands of people in an office building, and they did all sorts of research on what helped these people to feel healthier, less backaches, less lethargy, less tired, better quality sleep. They actually put cameras, and they were doing AI facial recognition. There's a lot we can actually learn now from the way that our eyes move or our mouths move. They did real heart rate monitors, ECGs, EEGs, you name it. Of course, Oura rings. Have you all seen some of the most recent advances in Oura rings? Anyway, guess what predicts your wellness at work in order? I'll give you some clues. Is nutrition at the top, or is sleep above that? Is hydration higher than that, or your sense of camaraderie? What's at the top? Guess what trumps it all? That's a bad word today. Guess what is actually in first place? Airflow. Medically proven. Ventilation. Natural airflow. We think we know so much about what actually predicts wellness outcomes, but these guys do such extraordinary, exceptional research. They're very, very well known as scientists that are robust. They actually test all of the assumptions that we're making. So I love it that they've actually just discovered it's airflow, right? Now, who here has a standing desk and has been convinced that a standing desk is what you need? No? Oh, sorry. Not so good for you. It stays down. Oh, good. All right, so the actual science does say that it's not about standing up whilst you're working. It's actually about moving up and down whilst you're working. We're, I think, pretty lucky here on the Sunshine Coast. Most of us don't work in these ugly concrete jungles. Most of us actually smile at each other. But imagine being in some of the cities in the world where people are grey, the weather is great. Yeah, I spent 5 years in one of those places. It's called London. What I will tell you even more than that is I'm not a Buddhist. I don't know very much about Buddhism. Well, I didn't know very much about Buddhism. I may have gone a little deep, like I go very deep on most other things. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has had only one, not companion, but co-worker for 50 years. And his name is Mr. Victor Chan. And Stephen Post has invited Mr. Victor Chan to come and speak at our conference in Boston and to be a part of our documentary. And Victor Chan actually wrote the book on compassion and also wrote the book on forgiveness. So what I can tell you is that those two subjects might be the clues as to what is more important than anything when you define friends. So we started by understanding that who our friends are is the most important thing to our well-being. And well-being is actually a very wholesome concept these days. It's financial well-being, emotional, physical, spiritual, environmental. Well-being is actually measured across all of these different parameters. And being compassionate and having friends who are compassionate is actually what we're looking for. That's what our amygdala is searching for in our friends. So you can go and share with everyone you know that the genuine and sincere relationships that you have in your life, where you feel like you can trust, one of the characteristics is compassion, and the other is forgiveness. And it's common sense, but it's nice that the science also says so as well. And when we put you into a brain scan, we can actually see where these areas are in your brain, and we can see how to cultivate it, not foster, how to cultivate it. So Positive Prime, I think, is the most fantastic opportunity that humanity has for only $99 a year. That's US. You do get access to 300 sessions. What I can tell you is we've got tens of thousands of people who've been in the beta mode. We've got hundreds and hundreds of people who pay us. Because I'm a local, it's a gift for you all. At the end of next year, you will be triggered to actually pay the $99, not the $199 at that point. So you will then be able to continue on at $99 forever. We are actually filming everything at this conference in Boston, or this summit, and we're also filming additional interviews, and we're editing all of that. And I can tell you, I've only just made a really big decision. One of my best friends from Bond is actually the executive producer of The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, The Bachelor in Paradise. Don't hold that against her. But anyway, now she's actually, I don't know if you know this, but Joe Rogan, the podcaster, is actually just about to be knocked off his perch by a woman named Alex Cooper, who has a podcast called Call Her Daddy. They're different over there. Anyway, so my friend Deb has actually just been producing a new TV show for Alex Cooper and Call Her Daddy brand. But she's actually been involved in creating this new documentary with me, and I've decided I'm actually going to choose a Sunshine Coast-based film production company to come and do this work. Yeah. I like that. So that's me in Los Angeles, where I spend too much time. I am one of those weird energy healers, in case anyone was wondering. So you actually all have a code on your desk, but I would take advantage of it if I were you. More to the point, I would share it. So if you get a chance, Luke, do they have access to this? So tomorrow or the next day, you're going to go to a page and it's going to explain to you the modelling that we've done, what happens when a community of 10,000 humans are positive priming. So we're actually rolling out something in the United States. Of course, they've got a much, much, much bigger population, and it's much, much easier for us to actually get to 10,000 people in one city. But the modelling actually shows that for every $1 invested, returns $90. Every $1 million of positive prime provided to 10,000 people returns to the community $90 million in uplift. I think that's an extraordinary contribution. It's not just me. I'm not saying that because it's positive prime is arguably mine. I'm saying because the science that informs it and inspires it has proven what happens in healthcare systems and in education systems and in businesses and what the economic uplift is. And I think it's something worth pursuing. So I'm going to ask all of you if you can go and share this with 5 or 10 or 20 or 100 other people. Imagine if on the Sunshine Coast we had 10,000 people positive priming. I'm not asking for 100,000, 10,000. And I think that the 100 people here could actually become the 200, and then the 200 become the 400, 800. I think we could get there. But the actual rationale and the modelling is on that page for you. I think that's it. Any questions? Yes.
If I have a newsletter to my clients, am I allowed to offer it to my
Sure.
clients?
Stephanie's just asked if I have a newsletter for my clients, can I offer it to my clients? Absolutely you can.
Thank you.
Absolutely you can. We do actually have networking groups who are offering it to everybody. We do have coaches in America or best-selling authors that have got, 30,000 people on their email database, and they've been I don't know if I should tell you this, the app's only been out for 2 months. So this is brand new. And I think, we've had thousands of people activate it in the last couple of weeks. But thousands is a long way from millions and millions and millions. We need millions and millions and millions.
A lot of work to be done out there.
There is. Thank you.